and it is a very good opportunity to tell something about the hard-to-reach communities in Bangladesh, who are mostly disadvantaged, marginalized, and vulnerable. About this community, there are very few papers, research-based papers actually address these issues in international journals, such as in Community Development Journal, number one. Number two is that there are a lot of scope for the CDJ to think about that one, because in Bangladesh, nearly 1/4 total populations are living in somehow hard-to-reach communities. I'm not going about much about the definitions of hard-to-reach communities. Rather than I will just tell about the characteristics of hard-to-reach communities. Yeah, these communities, the main characteristics are it is geographically unreached, economically poor, socially excluded, environmentally disadvantaged, people with disabilities, women in vulnerability, climate vulnerability, multiple disadvantages, and culturally and socially isolated. These are the main reasons that I want to touch in these communities. And these are some examples of the hard-to-reach communities, and there are some others as well. Many of our populations are now living in shoreland, hilly people, coastal people, Howard people, disaster-affected community, fishing community, island people, and sex workers. There are some others as well. These communities, the main characteristics are they are vulnerable economically, socially, psychologically, and another one is that they are always alert for the climate vulnerability. And all sorts of vulnerability actually goes in a multiple vulnerability. Within these diverse communities, there are still some commonalities that we can consider. Recently, in a community development perspective has been transferred from descriptive to contextualized, and within that contextualized, there are a lot of diversity of that one. But if you look, there are some areas that the commonalities are there. For example, if you look at the social inequalities, poverty, and all sorts of these issues are very common, but there are some common grounds. For example, their culture, and very traditional culture and very rich culture. If you look their lifestyle and livelihood style, values and norms, custom, governance, community harmony, ritual practices, and community leadership, all are very, very significant, and all are very, very important to look these issues. Next one. If you look the alliance for collective actions, we can categorize in local, national, and global. And local, we can say that, in our country, there are not many centers or universities that look these communities actually. So at national levels, we have some academics and research network between university, research institution, and funding agencies that we usually do it, but it's not well planned. And individually, we do it. But if we look that in academic and research network and partnership between university, research institutions, and funding agencies, we have this opportunity, but still it is very few initiatives, if you can see. For example, in the University of Dhaka, we did not build any this kind of centers that actually look that one. We have a very indigenous communities, very rich one, but we don't have any such kind of center. What are the local and global actions that we can integrate it? For example, I give a number of examples. For example, we can build a forum and recruit a country representative that can consult with that one as a coordinator. We can coordinate local efforts and global initiatives through coordinations. For example, community development journals, one person can lead some of the areas of particular regions. A special issue can be, for example, hard-to-reach communities, climate change, social vulnerabilities, or even in indigenous communities, in fishing communities that might be an interesting for CDJ for a special issue. Next one. What are the challenges we have? Definitely a lot of challenges within the diversity. First challenges is there is still local and global diversity, and there is the conflict of that one. Language is very significant one. We have the Bengali language, but still in hard-to-reach communities, they have the local accent. So it's very difficult for somebody to go and conduct any research. Even I'm the a citizen of that country, but I cannot have any access in some communities, especially indigenous community and hard-to-reach communities, Chorland, they have their own language. And lack of international attention and interest, no doubt about that. UNESCO is working, but not many research are conducting on these particular issues and particular communities. Homelessness, again, is another, and there is no stability of that one. Is the settlement is not permanent, and they're moving one chore to another chore, one house to another house, where they actually have got the income opportunities. Working communities in frequently changing one place to another place is one way. For example, is livelihood, income, and another one is because of the climate. They're pushing one place to another place, so our internal migration is very high. And sometimes what happens is, this point is more interesting, that one, the people who are actually looking support, they are not actually looking support, because this kind of status might be very useful for them to get some help from the community, so they don't want to change themselves. Another one is lack of funding of this particular of these communities. In many cases, lack of local expert we don't have. Within the small country, but a lot of diversity is there, but we don't have any such kind of expert that can deal with the particular area or particular interest of research. And how we can solve? I give some of the areas that effective partnership can be. Partnership between the Western and Asian, that might go a good initiative. We need to increase the audience. I think the community conference might be a very useful tool. Then we can arrange this kind of symposium and workshop. Increase local initiatives, increase communications to hard-to-reach communities. I don't know how we'll do that. Communication means in many things. Communication geographically distant, if it is very difficult to touch them. But in many ways, local technology might be helpful to reach those communities, to increase the communication skill. Increased research initiative, particularly national and international can come forward for that one, because we have the lack of funding locally. Our government funding is less, and there are not many organizations who are working to to bring this issue to the international audience. But we can open some forum, and some center might be open in some universities that might very useful to talk about themselves. That's all. Thank you.